y'all, it's Kay from the Literary Apothecary, and today we're going to do round 2 of the book battle for my favorite book of 2021, my favorite read of 2021. Today is round 2, maybe even round 3, depending on how long this goes. We'll see. So we took all of the winners from round 1 and matched them up in round 2, along with some of the books that had buys in it. And let's just get to it, because this is going to take a while if it is any indicator from round 1. So our first matchup, we have The Two Towers, Book 2 in the Lord of the Rings series by J.R.R. Tolkien versus The House in the Cerulean Sea. And y'all, just like last time, I did not look at these ahead of time. And some of these are going to be way harder than others. So let's get to it. Two Towers versus The House in the Cerulean Sea. Holy cow, that is so hard. I don't even want to think about that. I'm just going to go with a gut instinct and say House in the Cerulean Sea. Because Lord of the Rings, as much as I loved it and I love them Hobbits, did not affect me quite as much as The House in the Cerulean Sea did. Just a slight win for House in the Cerulean Sea. Next up, we have Artificial Condition, which is book 2 in the Murderbot series by Martha Wells, up against The Paris Architect, which was a historical fiction book I read. And this one I'm going to give to Murderbot because I love Murderbot. He is a fantastic character. He just wants to watch his soaps and have everyone just leave him alone. And The Paris Architect was kind of like, it was okay. It wasn't bad, but it was just okay. Next up, we have When We Believed in Mermaids versus The Return of the King, which is book 3 in the Lord of the Rings series. This one goes to definitely Return of the King. As much as I enjoyed When We Believed in Mermaids and not storyline, this one is hands down Return of the King. Next up, we have a classics battle, The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky versus The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a hard one. The Brothers Karamazov versus The Count of Monte Cristo. This one I'm going to give to The Count of Monte Cristo because that ending, man, that ending just had me going. But I absolutely love The Brothers Karamazov, and if you're looking to get into Russian literature and you want a good audiobook, I highly recommend The Brothers Karamazov because it was just like listening to Russian soap opera. It was so much fun. But I'm giving it to Count of Monte Cristo. Next up, we have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which is book 1 in the Great Cities series versus The Return of the Sorcerer. Ooh, this is a hard one. This is a hard one. This one I'm going to give to N.K. Jemisin because this book was totally different than all of her other books. And I've only read The Return of the Sorcerer by Clark Ashton Smith. So this one is going to The City We Became because it was such a cool idea of cities becoming alive and inside people, and they're manifesting the city powers. And the way that she was able to encapsulate each one of the New York City boroughs was absolute perfection. Okay, so our next matchup, we have Poison Study, which is book 1 in that series, versus Bloody Rose, which is book 2 in the Banned series. I enjoyed Poison Study. I really liked it, and if it was up against some of these other books, I would definitely make that a winner. But Bloody Rose was just so bloody good. Pun intended. Nicholas Eames just... I can't wait for book 3, so this one goes to Bloody Rose. I reread half of that book after I finished it. It was that good. Ooh, here is a tricky one for a lot of people. Next up, we have The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 1 in the Stormlight Archive series versus The Fellowship of the Ring, which is book 1 in the Lord of the Rings series. Oh man, this one is tricky. This one is tricky. I really enjoyed Way of Kings, and I can't wait to reread that and continue the series. But this one I'm going to actually give to the Fellowship of the Ring, because that was our introduction to the whole gang. And even though we had the Hobbit and that was our introduction to the Hobbits, this was an introduction to the Hobbits that we knew of, Frodo and Samwise and Merry and Pippin, my favorite. So this one is the Fellowship of the Ring. Next up, this one I think is going to be an easy one for me. The Eye of the World, which is book 1 in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, up against the 5th season, book 1 in the Broken Earth series by N.K. Jemisin. Once again, N.K. Jemisin takes this matchup because the Eye of the World, I enjoyed it, but it took me 3 months to get through, whereas the 5th season, I just flew through it. I absolutely loved that so much. Next up, we have A Court of Mist and Fury, which is ACOTAR Book 2 by Sarah J. Maas versus Voyager Book 3 in the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. Now this one is a tricky one because y'all know how much I love Outlander, but I really enjoyed A Court of Mist and Fury and seeing more of those characters. So this is a tricky one. I think I give this one to Voyager because we get one of my favorite characters in Voyager, and it sets up a lot of important things for the future of the series, whereas A Court of Mist and Fury was a fun read. It was an interesting read. It had me interested throughout the whole thing, but I still did not like that main character at all. So this matchup goes to Voyager. Next up, we have The Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston versus Valour by John Gwynne, which is book 2 in the Faithful and the Fallen series. Voyager took me a long time to get through. Not quite as long as Eye of the World, but still a long time. Valour, that is. Valour took me a long time to get through. Not quite as long as Voyager, but still very long. Whereas The Eyes Were Watching God just flew by, and I was fascinated by Zora Neale Hurston's writing, and her prose was just unbeatable. So this round goes to Their Eyes Were Watching God, which will make Leslie very, very happy. Next up, we have Dragonfly Falling, which is book 2 in the Shadows of the App series by Adrian Tchaikovsky versus Firekeeper's Daughter by Angelina Lully, and this one goes to Firekeeper's Daughter because I was disappointed by Dragonfly Falling. That one was a slog for me, but Firekeeper's Daughter was just so fantastic. Next up, we have The Fires of Hell, which was kind of a work in progress, written by my friend Andrew at Get Right In, and I kind of helped him edit this, beta read, proofread, whatever Andrew wants to call it, versus From Blood and Ash, which is book 1 in the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And Andrew, as much as I love you, you know that book, and you know what I'm going to say. This round goes to From Blood and Ash because Andrew's book is going to be really good when it's finished, but it's not quite there yet. So From Blood and Ash gets this round. Next matchup, we have Sense and Sensibility versus The Patience of a Dead Man. And so this is Jane Austen versus Michael Clark, and this one I'm going to give to The Patience of a Dead Man because that was my introduction to horror, like I said before, and that book was so good. It had me scared to death, whereas Sense and Sensibility was a great Jane Austen novel, but it's not my favorite of hers, and so this one goes to The Patience of a Dead Man. Next up, we have Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is book 1 in the Expanse series, versus Winterdance, which was a memoir that I read for my dog sled vlog, and this is an easy one. This one goes to Leviathan Wakes because Winterdance kind of disappointed me. I wanted to get more into it, and it kind of got into it on parts that I didn't want and didn't go in depth on parts that I wanted. And Leviathan Wakes because I think, at least for me, because I watched the TV show first before I read the book, I was able to envision everything going on to all the characters a lot better than I think I would have if I just read the book first, which is something that I don't often do, but I did for this. So this round goes to Leviathan Wakes. Next up, we have The Hero of Ages, which is Mistborn Book 3 by Brandon Sanderson versus The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, Book 1 in the First Law trilogy. This one is tricky. This one I'm giving to The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson because that book blew my mind in ways that I was not expecting, whereas The Blade Itself entertained me and I enjoyed it and I want to continue in that series, but did not entertain me as much as The Hero of Ages, because Brandon Sanderson knows how to write an ending, man. Next up we have, this is a hard one, The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick, which is Book 2 in the Rook and the Rose series, versus Persuasion by Jane Austen. And I enjoyed my reread of Persuasion. It changed my mind. It persuaded me to change my mind on how I felt about this book. But The Liar's Knot was so good and I can't wait for Book 3. So this one I give to The Liar's Knot by M.A. Carrick, which will also make Leslie happy. A lot of these are going to make Leslie happy. Okay, next matchup we have this is an easy one. Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone by Diana Gabaldon, which is the latest book of the Outlander series, Book 9, versus Empire of Black and Gold, Book 1 in the Shadows of the Op series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I really enjoyed Empire and Black and Gold, but Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone completely blew my mind. It became my favorite book in the whole series, and that's saying a lot because Book 2, Dragonfly Falling, or Book 2, Dragonfly and Amber, had that spot for the longest time. Ever since I reread Dragonfly and Amber, that was my favorite book until I read Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone. So this one goes to Diana Gabaldon, which will surprise no one. The next matchup we have City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, which is Book 1 in the Daevabad trilogy, versus Dark Matter. And this is another easy one for me because I was disappointed with Dark Matter. I don't know if it was I read the book too fast, I didn't get what was really going on, but I just felt like it was okay. It was middle of the road, where I really, really, really enjoyed The City of Brass. I listened to that via audiobook as well as the Dark Matter, and I just I loved that series and I can't wait to continue that. So that one goes to The City of Brass. Our next round, this is another hard one. We have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley versus The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And this one I'm going to give to Frankenstein because we have Frankenstein and it's totally different than the movies that we've seen. And this book, I was very surprised with just how much I loved it. I knew I was going to love it, but I was surprised with just how much I loved it. Whereas I absolutely love The Hobbit and all of the Hobbits, but we get more Hobbits in the Lord of the Rings series where we don't get more Frankenstein. Frankenstein is it. Is a standalone. Is it. So this one goes to Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Also, just because she laid the groundwork for so much horror. Where, yes, J.R.R. Tolkien laid the groundwork for fantasy, but that was more with the Lord of the Rings series, in my opinion, than The Hobbit, even though I could just be talking out my butt right now. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's the impression that I got from how everyone talks about J.R.R. Tolkien. Next up, we have Beantown Girls, which is another historical fiction book, versus Of Blood and Bone, which is Book 2 in that Nora Roberts series, the Chronicles of One. This one is hard because I was felt middle of the road on both of these. Gut instinct, I'm giving this to Beantown Girls because this gave me threw me some loops, whereas the Nora Roberts series, I didn't get the surprises really until Book 3. So this one goes to Beantown Girls. Next up, ooh, this one is a hard one. We have Malice by John Gwynne, which is book 1 in the Faithful and the Fallen series, versus Notes from a Dead House by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This one is hard. This one goes to Notes from a Dead House because Malice was good, but it was super long and confusing at parts, and we have lots of epic fantasy here, but we don't have lots of books like Notes from a Dead House because there is nothing like Notes from a Dead House. So Fyodor Dostoevsky takes this round. Next up, our next matchup, we have Fireborne by Rosaria Munda, which is book 1 in that series. I think it's the Aurelian Cycle series, versus Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell, which is book 1 in that series, the Greatcoat series. And this is another hard one, but this one I'm going to give to Traitor's Blade because I enjoyed that slightly more than Fireborne. Fireborne was a YA book and it was slightly predictable for me, whereas Traitor's Blade, I couldn't tell you beforehand what was going to happen. Next up, we have Written in My Own Heart's Blood, which is book 8 in the Outlander series, another Outlander book, versus Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. And this, so in Written in My Own Heart's Blood, we get a lot of historical background, we get some famous characters, we get some things that had been laid down in the beginning of the series coming full circle. So I enjoyed that, but I'm going to give this one to Redeeming Love because Redeeming Love just affected me so freaking much. Next up, we have Half Sick of Shadows versus The Hod King by Josiah Bancroft, book 3 in the Books of Babel series. This one is an easy one. This one goes to The Hod King because Half Sick of Shadows was a Arthurian legend retelling and it disappointed me. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I didn't like where the story took some parts of it and some characters. So this one goes to The Hod King because, holy cow, the Books of Babel series is fantastic. Next up, we have Dragonfly and Amber, book 2, like I talked about earlier, in the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon, versus Dead Woman Scorned, which is book 2 in the Patience of a Dead Man series by Michael Clark. And this one I give to Outlander, Dragonfly and Amber, because I loved Dead Woman Scorned and it completely blew my mind, but it did not affect me the way that Dragonfly and Amber did. The way that Diana Gabaldon took all of these different emotions and things that happen in real life and wrote them into this fantasy book she made me feel all of these emotions, and she made me feel sorry for Claire, who I did not like at all in book 1, and I started to feel sympathetic for her in book 2. So that's huge for me. I don't often get affected like that in books. I get affected by emotions, I get affected by scenes happening and favorite characters doing stuff, but I don't often get affected in the way where I feel sympathetic towards a character that I didn't before. So this one goes to Dragonfly and Amber. Next up, we have Dune, book 1 in the Dune series, the Dune saga, whatever you want to call it, by Frank Herbert, classic, versus Wildcat, which is book 1 in that series by J.P. Harker. J.P. is the sweetest man ever, but I'm sorry, J.P., you can't compete with Dune. So this one goes to Dune. Next up, we have I Can't Make This Up by Kevin Hart versus, let me make sure I have all of this done right. Yep. Versus The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. And I really enjoyed the audiobook for I Can't Make This Up. It was like listening to Kevin Hart's stand-up, but I was completely, like I've said before, blown away by The Lost Queen. So this one goes to The Lost Queen. Our next matchup, this one is really, really hard. This might be the hardest one of this round. We'll see. We have the Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern versus Jade City Book 1 in the Green Bone Saga by Fonda Lee. This one is hard. Holy cow, this one is hard because these are both fantasy books. They're both amazing books. I gave them both 5 stars. But they're so very different from each other. Holy cow, how do I pick? How do I pick, y'all? I'm gonna give this one to the Starless Sea because I love Jade City, but as I just finished Jade War, I love Jade War even more, and Starless Sea is a standalone, and that book was completely mind-blowing. That book was so beautiful. I can't not pick it. Starless Sea by Aaron Morgenstern. Just a couple more matchups to go before round 2 is done. Next up we have Let There Be Love, which is book 1 in the Sled Dog series, I think it's called. This was a book that I read again for that dog sled vlog. This was a romance. Versus The Fiery Cross by Danica Baldwin, book 5 in the Outlander series. This one goes to The Fiery Cross because it was a nice light romance, but I wanted more. And I needed more from that book to beat an Outlander book. So this one goes to Fiery Cross. Next up, we have a match of the Books of Babel series. Now this is a really interesting one because we have The Fall of Babel, which is the final book in the Books of Babel series by Josiah Bancroft, up against Senlin Ascends, which was the first book in that series. So, did I enjoy the ending or the beginning more? And this one I'm going to give to, might be a controversial one for people that have read The Fall of Babel, because I know there's been controversial things about that book, especially that ending. I'm going to give this one to Fall of Babel because I enjoyed where our characters developed more in that book compared to Senlin Ascends. So this one goes to The Fall of Babel, but either way, Josiah Bancroft wins that matchup. Next up we have The Cracked Spine, which is book 1 in the Scottish Bookshop Mystery, versus Kings of Wyld by Nicholas Eames, book 1 in the Band series, and I enjoyed The Cracked Spine. It was such a cute, cozy mystery, but it does not beat Kings of the Wyld. That's one of my favorite books I've read last year, and that is the winner there. Nicholas Eames won that matchup. And our last matchup of round 2, we have Arm of the Sphinx, which is book 2 in the Books of Babel series, versus Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I love Books of Babel, but I'm going to give this one to Anne of Green Gables because we've got other Books of Babel series in this round, as you can see, that have won, but we only have one Anne of Green Gables, and there's only one Anne. So this matchup goes to Anne of Green Gables. So those are all of our matchups for round 2. Let me know in the comments below which ones are controversial to you, which ones you would have done differently, which ones are your favorite matchups. This was so hard, and it's only going to get harder in round 3 and 4. I don't know how many rounds this is going to be. I haven't looked ahead to see how many it comes out to, but this was round 2 in the Books Battle series that I've created. Thanks to, again, Michael Nip. I saw him do this, and I thought, what a great idea. So y'all need to go check out Michael Nip's video to see what his favorite book read of 2021 was. This was my round 2. He did one long video. I'm doing separate videos for each round. Like I said, let me know what your favorites were, what your most controversial picks were in this round. And stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I have a new video coming out, especially when round 3 comes out. As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Come join our Discord and talk about these with me on Discord. I can't wait to talk about them with y'all. keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back. Bye.